Good morning, everyone, to another edition of MHQ's Foundation Podcast 101, where over the next couple of weeks, we'll actually take a tangent and discuss not only legacy planning, not only asset protection, but the use of foundation in relation to single family offices. And for that, I recruited the perfect man for the job, Ismail Ajar. Good morning.
Good morning, Jan.
Ismail is director, EY MENA Private, and pretty much the one person in the Gulf that does the most in terms of setting up family offices, advising families, setting up family offices, helping them strategize, and that can be for entrepreneurs and family enterprises. So he has a lot to offer in that space, and he's kind enough to give us a couple of minutes this morning. So without further ado, let's jump into the action with you, Ismail. And let's look at single family offices. What is it? A lot of people try to define it. Can you?
Yeah, now look, there are a lot of myths and misconceptions about single family office, and it's important to clarify what it is really. And I always try to define a single family office very simply by comparing it to a commercial enterprise.
Yeah.
So in fact, a single family office can be compared to a commercial enterprise, but it has two features that makes it a very, very special commercial enterprise. The first feature is that its only clients are members of one single families, if it's a single family office,
Yes.
or members of several families if it's a multi-family office. And the second feature is that the activities of that single family office or multi-family office are determined by a menu of services that is bespoke to each of them.
Okay,
right?
clear.
And the art really of helping a family to create a family office reside in understanding their needs and requirements and helping them shape up this bespoke menu of services.
So you mentioned the tailored aspect of not like one size fitting all, but clearly there must be a strategy of defining what are the priorities. You also touch on a menu, which for a food lover like me really strikes a chord. So let's look at this menu. What sort of services are typically provided by a single family office?
Look, the problem with single family office or with wealthy families in general is that we tend to say they're all unique. And I don't disagree with that. They're indeed all unique. But if you start by saying they're all unique, that means that you cannot create a methodology or an approach that basically helps you consistently or brings consistency in the way you can help families create single family offices. And that's what we try to do in-house at EY, to create an approach, right, that is consistent and that is based on trends that we see with the largest families around the world. And so this approach is based on 4 pillars of services that single family offices can provide to their clients. So being family members or legal entities belonging to these family members, and it's strategy, governance, advisory, and financial planning.
Okay.
Let's move maybe to the...
Yeah, keep on.
Let's move to the next page maybe so we can really dive in the specifics.
Exactly. So what does every pillar entail in terms of granular?
Absolutely. And so in strategy, if we start with strategy, it's business financial advisory, estate wealth transfer, and it's training and education, right? And within each of these 3 sub-pillars, in our model, you can find, 10, 15, 20 sub-pillar, if you wish, which are the actual activities. So we really break it into pieces. So we create an overall menu, right? In the best restaurant, you have a very, very lean menu, very focused menu without, that many dishes. But actually, when we start the exercise with a family, we try to have a very, very large menu, right? And so the clients can say, oh, I like that, I don't like that. And then we go, ultimately we reach the 3 stars Michelin restaurant let's say, menu. So strategy is one, governance is two, and it's not only, you know, family governance, it's a generic term. So it includes reporting, record keeping, succession planning, administrative services. In advisory, we find tax and legal.
Yes.
We find compliance, regulatory assistance, and we find risk management. And in financial planning, we find, let's say, maybe what family offices are most famous for, which mean investment management, philanthropic management, life management, and budgeting.
Okay.
Okay, and what's important, I think, to take into account here is that one family office, right, doesn't need to do all of that, right? It really depends on what the family needs and what the family wants, right? So one family office might do only financial planning, for instance, and disregard everything else. And one family office might do everything, or pretty much everything. And that's where we are going to find the uniqueness of the family office. It's true, the choice of all these options, which are going to result eventually in a unique menu of services, driven by a unique strategy, driven by unique needs and objectives of the specific family that you're assisting.
So you mentioned that very eloquently about these services and what these services meeting the objectives. This is something you can seek by simply going to providers. So why would a family want to say, look, I do not want to go to a provider straight up. I actually want to set up my own organization. What are the reasons driving families to do that step towards setting up their own infrastructure?
First, I want to break another myth, right? That it's not because you create a single family office that you do everything yourself. I think that's a wrong approach. Even the most successful family offices around the world and the most advanced family offices around the world, they don't do everything themselves. They strike the right balance between outsourcing on the one hand, and on the other hand, in-housing. So recruiting people to actually provide these services in-house. Yeah. But what really adds value in a family office is what I would call smart outsourcing, or outsourcing in a way that, you know, you keep an eye through your staff on what's going on. And we see that typically with the bankers, where, you know, when a family has a single family office, the relationship completely changed, because they move from being a rather unsophisticated investor to becoming, right, ultimately an institutional investor or quasi-institutional investor, which means that they typically don't even deal with the same people, you know, within the bank, that they're transferred to another bank. And the type of services that they're looking for within the banks are also different. But that's a myth that is important to break, because, you know, again, it doesn't mean that, okay, family X creates an SFO, they're not going to, you know, work with you, Jan, anymore. They don't need a lawyer, they don't need anything. No, there are for sure services that will be outsourced.
Interestingly, we actually, it's funny, we didn't rehearse this. We actually have an outsourcing series of services at MHQ, which is designed and built around single family offices, the same way you guys at EY have a function like this. So clearly, you're right. You're very good to point out this misconception, because it's not because you do your own organization that you will do everything in-house with a lot of overhead costs. You need to arbitrage what do you want to keep inside and what do you want to keep outside. I want to rebound around what you said about the bankers and asset management, because that is often one of the benefits of setting up a single family office, is actually recruiting people that have your interest at heart and are not there to sell you some sort of banking product that you do not understand. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on some of the benefits of single family offices typically?
Yes, and I think really the overarching benefit of a single family office is that it acts as a bridge. And that's really the word that I use when I explain it to my clients. It's a bridge, and it's bridging the family and the service providers. And if you hire the right people within the single family office, you'll have a very strong bridge that will be able to, understand what the service providers, bankers, legal, tax, etc., are bringing to you, right? And that will be able to respond to their request, right, without your involvement as a family member. And that bridge will, come to you on a periodical basis to report to you, progress, issues, challenges. But you don't need to tackle these challenges. You don't need to get involved. It's his job, right? It's the job of the single family office to do that for you. And generally, entrepreneur or ultra high net worth individuals, family business owners or leaders, there's one thing that they're lacking, which is time. They don't have time, right? And some of them don't have the focus on the activities being carried out by the single family office. Some of them don't have the knowledge, right? You can be the most successful entrepreneur, but you can be terrible at wealth management, and that's fine, as long as you have a good guy to do it for you. And that's where the private banking model is a bit sometimes challenging, because, as you said, private bankers tend to have the best interest of their banks in mind, and not always the best interest of their clients. And that's where having a bridge, right, who very much has your best interest in mind, helps basically professionalize the way the overall wealth management activity is conducted. There are other benefits, and they're written on the slide. So separation between business and private, I think it's essential to success for any family business owner. Centralization and institutionalization, we could use also the word professionalization of whatever is being conducted, whatever activities belong to the menu of service of the family office. Professionalization of risk management, governance and management structure that can be formalized and ultimately institutionalized. Eliminate conflict of interest that is in relation to product, but sometimes that in relation also to other service providers, be it trustee, for instance, that sometimes think, oh, we're the captain of the ship, we don't answer to anyone. Well, look, now you have an SFO guy who's going to monitor what you're doing very closely. So you'd better perform. That's really the value of the single family office. You'd better perform, service provider. Otherwise, you'll be fired.
Yeah.
Why? Because I'm going to monitor very closely what you're doing, and I'll report it. I'll report the same to the family.
Yeah,
and privacy confidentiality,
really.
of course.
Yes.
Absolutely. And privacy confidentiality is paramount. But there, I think there's also a misconception that thinking, oh, if I do it myself, it will be more, more confidential. That's not always true, because nowadays, as you know, Jan, technology, everything goes through technology. Data goes through technology. And so I've seen family offices that were, on paper, very confidential, very private, but actually they missed investing in the right technology. And actually they were much less private, much less confidential than they were before. And again, technology, you don't need to buy it. Yeah. You can rent it, or you can use, a service provider who offers you the right platform. So it's again the same type of thing. Outsource or do in-house. You have the choice.
Interesting. When you so let's say now you are an entrepreneur or a family, and you want to start this process. You remember this menu. You said the services. I'm interested in the first key consideration that one should assess actually before starting the process or at inception. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. I think, it's all about understanding, why you want to do it, right? Why does the family actually need a family office? What is going to be the purpose of that family office? And brings to my brings me a story that happened to me pre-COVID in Saudi, for one of the top families over there. And I was meeting a principal who was the leader of his own family branch within that family. And he told me, look, Ismail, I want a family office. Why do you want a family office? Because my cousin has one, and that's something I want to have. Well, are you sure you want one? And we digged into it, and we actually realized that the family, the very same family, was at the same time with different advisors creating 4 family offices.
Yes.
4 family offices. Why do you need 4 family offices, right? And there were no reason. Yep. So it's just, people who were not communicating with each other, and unfortunately, big ego, which meant, they don't talk to each other. If he has one, I should have one. So it's a bit of an extreme example, but real life example. Purpose is very important. Why do you need it? Some families may not need it at all. So it's very important to ask yourself the question and to let the advisor challenge you. The menu of service is so important and will be built on the purpose, built on the needs and objective of the family. We touched upon it earlier. Then it's also talking about the beneficiaries, right? Who are going to be the beneficiaries of the services? Is it only bloodline family members?
Yes.
Are we authorizing the in-laws to benefit maybe from certain services or all the services? What about, some, let's say, friends or if not friends, girlfriends or boyfriends, right? Can they, benefit, although they're not in-laws technically, they're not family members as such, can they benefit? Question mark, right? Yeah. And if they benefit, should they pay for it, right? That connects with the source of funds. Should they pay for the services for real, right? Invoices, wire transfer, or, theoretically, so invoices, but then the funds are taken somewhere else, right? Yes. And funding the family office is super important. And with funding comes KPIs, right? How will you measure the success of your family office? That's very, very important to think about it from the beginning. And I've seen families who think, okay, we're going to build it as cost center, and then we're going to seek a regulatory authorization. So we're going to become regulated. So we're going to open up to friends, right, for real, right, wealthy friends like us, another wealthy family, and then we're going to charge them for real, right, invoice, wire transfer, and then we turn a cost center into what could become potentially a profit center, and we transform a single family office in a multi-family office. And that's the type of discussion that I've had with many families, to be honest, who always, keep that in mind. Don't forget they're entrepreneur after all.
And I like what you said here. It's the evolution of a family office. What is true today in terms of need, in terms of the menu, can evolve over time. It can increase, decrease with number of second generation or third generation people. And to that, maybe this illustration that you kindly provided, which is a single family office can start with something very simple. A founder's office with just a founder and a couple of support staff and someone trying to organize his or her affairs in terms of investment, legacy, efficiency, etc., but then grow over time. You mentioned here this example of a medium-sized family office, which is often what we see in this market, in this region at inception. But then, as you mentioned, it can evolve into completely different areas, different asset classes, different sort of services, and eventually end up with something like this, which is not necessarily very complicated, but eventually will have a number of people that are external to the families, maybe advisors. You will need to define who the controllers are, who the supervision is, but clearly here you are billing for the long run. And in a time as we have right now, COVID, family tools and single family office are increasingly put under pressure to deliver. You mentioned the KPIs before. They need to generate money for the family if the business is eventually either sold or is not going that well, because people are growing their families and they need more money to be generated. So a very good example here provided by you, Ismail, in terms of evolution of family office over generation, depending on the needs growing and expanding also on a cross-border basis. This is a foundation podcast at heart, so we always do tangent into wealth and legacy planning. I just want to finish the last 3-4 minutes. We talked about foundation, you talked about single family offices. Are they in a way compatible? Is it one or the other? What is your read about the institution that you create as a SFO and the structure of a foundation that is now available in the IFC, ADGM, and Russell Cayman?
Most of the single family offices that we have advised on are not owning assets as such. I don't personally think that single family offices are the best products or are the best legal construct to own assets. I think there are structures that are much better at owning assets for many, many reasons, right? And one of those structures is the foundation. There are others, but one of those structures is the foundation that is particularly strong and tried and tested for GCC assets. Okay, so they're very much compatible, right? The single family office and the foundation. The single family office would act as a management company or an advisory company without owning assets. And it would have to be connected somehow with the foundation or the underlying holding company below the foundation. What type of connection? Well, first of all, there should be, some sort of management agreement to allow the single family office to manage the assets that are held by the foundation directly or indirectly. And then another, let's say, type of connection that may exist is an ownership connection. And it's not the single family office owning the foundation, of course, but the other way around.
Yeah.
Having the foundation owning the single family office. And that's something that we were discussing actually prior to the podcast with you, Jan, right? And I think you made some sort of research about that. Why don't you share the result of that research?
It's a very fair point. It is difficult to assess how many single family office there is regionally, because some people are registered in DIFC, some in ADGM, some in DMCC. Many local families actually operate from the mainland through an LLC, the shares of which are held in personal capacity. But if you look, and it's a small sample size, but if you look at all the SFOs that are registered as SFOs in the DFC and the MCC, which is about 75 of them, 85% are held in an individual capacity, which to me is shocking. Because, so fair, maybe these single family offices do not own the assets directly, in which case there is a little bit less risk, but people need to understand that if you have principals or members of one family that hold shares in an entity that is a management company that is vital, that needs to have business continuity to manage high value assets, if something happens to one of these persons, it puts this efficiency at risk. And we are now very busy reaching out to these families and educating them like we do today about the benefit of single family office in one way, reviewing their service menu. Maybe it has changed since they launched, but particularly think of adding a tool to whatever framework they have, upgrading, going from a diesel car to a Tesla, welcome the modernity and actually add or consider adding a foundation to their family holding structure. So let's see where this takes us. Ismail, I'm very grateful for you taking the time. This was very enlightening, and my schedule tells me that you will come to this podcast again in a couple of weeks so that we can discuss single family office do's and don'ts from your experience. So I look forward to that. I would like to thank you once again, and wishing all of the people a good day. In the meantime, if you have questions, either for us at MHQ or for the excellent Ismail Ajar at EY, you will see the email addresses on the bottom of this feed, and feel free to reach out. Ismail is the king of answering fast to his email, you will see. Thank you very much. Wish you a good day.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you, everyone.